Alrighty, so this will be French 1. I believe we're technically week 17 at this point. You'll excuse me, it is late in the evening, and so I have moved to wearing a comfy sweater. I don't have to be in classes, right? So I got all comfy in the camo, but let's take a look at what we're going to be covering. If you recall, we started in on material. We're not able to fully complete it. We talked about week 14 material, and then we are going to cover week 15 material today and cover some of week 17 if I can squeeze that all in decent time. So first and foremost, we'll start out with our, there we go. We'll start out with our verbs. And I actually wanted to show you this real fast. This is the book that I use. It is extremely beat up, as you can tell. It's fair share of love. But this verb book is fantastic. It is literally 501 French verbs. And it's got exercises in the front that help teach you different tenses, how to use them, what they mean, what are their English equivalents, avoiding or after certain verbs, what they look like, how to use different program articles and stuff, and just kind of some various educational explorations exercises basically. But overall, actually, this is where I get the essential 55 verb list. You'll see I've got that bookmarked. This is basically all the verbs you need to make sure you know. And then the rest of the verb book looks like this. Okay, so it's going to give you the 14 tenses for each verb. It's going to tell you all of the various information, like the past participle of this verb. Might be a little hard for you to see on the screen, but then it's also got down at the bottom for some of them, you know, common idiomatic phrases that might be used with this particular verb. And on top of that, if you look in the back, it's actually got an index of common irregular French verbs, common regular verbs. There's a whole index of other verbs that aren't in the book, but it will give you a number for a verb that is in here, one of the 501 that it conjugates like. So if you can't find a specific verb in there, then you can go look it up in the back of the index, and then it'll say, you know, oh, this conjugates similar to verb 222. Go find verb 222, and now you're able to conjugate that verb as well. So this is very helpful. I don't remember it being very expensive either. I've had this one for forever, ever since I was in high school. So this book is at least like 6 to 7 years old. Actually, it's got to be older than that because I graduated in 2014. So this bad boy's closing in on almost 10 years old at this point, and it has helped me through a lot. So just a thought for you if you're looking for a resource. Yeah, there you go. So let's jump in on the verb list then. And let's see what verbs we're supposed to be doing today. And I'm gonna use the whiteboard here in just a second. Let me look and see what we've got. I don't remember exactly where we're at in the essential 55 verb list here. Week 17. My goodness, I can't believe that we're there already. Okay, week 17. We've got envoyer and étendre. Envoyer and étendre. So both of these verbs, again, I can easily find them in here. Just have to find E. EQST. Oop, somebody turned the light off on me. Well, you'll have to give me a second. I'll have to move to another location. Give me half a second. Here we go. And pause the recording. Oop. I seem to have turned the recording off. Hey. Alrighty, you're gonna have to give me 2 seconds. I didn't mean to turn the recording back on. This is super professional of me. Got all sorts of junk that on top of the laptop. Alrighty, so let's try this again, shall we? It is late in the evening at my dorm building, and they tend to turn the lights out. I figured they would see me sitting there in the hallway though and not turn the lights out, but evidently that was not the case. All right, let's find a plug here first. Here we go. All right, so our first verb of the day is envoyer. I apologize. Usually I am far more professional in my videos, but tonight is just not that night, Aunt Sandy. Well, at least it's just you. There we go. All right. We're set. Okay, let's try this again, shall we? Envoyer, and the other verb that we're going to learn is étendre. Very fun. All right. I really like the verb envoyer because of a really nifty thing about it that you get to talk about. So, verbs, here we go. Envoyer. Envoyer means to send, and éteindre has a little accent on it, but it means to extinguish. Now, do recall that sometimes these verbs, you're like, gee, I don't think I would ever actually use that verb in French, but sometimes they're a particular style of verb, sometimes they're a particular conjugation format, etc., that once you learn, it makes it easier to conjugate certain verbs. Another category, for example. So envoyer is fun because you've got the extended ending of YER. Now that seems like that would be no big deal, and it really and truthfully is. But we have to have a conversation about pronunciation in French. Anytime you have a YER ending and you take off the ER, so when we take envoyer and make it envoy, and we add an ending to it, we now have the problem of a vowel that's just kind of hanging out there. All right. And in French, we can't really have hanging vowels. All right. We can't really have vowels in the middle of a word like envoyer that don't say anything. All right. The exceptions to that rule are, of course, if it has an accent over it, or if it's already sounded, right? If it's in the middle of the word, we need to say it, okay? Otherwise, it doesn't quite work in French. So in French, we can't really have hanging vowels. Notable exception, if it has an accent over it, then it's not hanging out. It actually has a pronunciation added to it. That's why we have accents, right? The other option, though, is since we will have this dangling Y, which you'll find commonly happens is that Y turns to I in these verbs, okay? Y turns to I, okay? So as you're going through, Y turns to I in these verbs when the Y would otherwise be followed by a silent E. That's basically how it breaks down, okay? And so that means that this verb is still going to conjugate the way you would anticipate it to, because it's an ER verb, but you're going to take the Y and you're going to turn it to an I, all right? So again, I've got my handy dandy Barron's sitting right here. I could show you a picture of this, right? But I'm gonna type it out for you actually. So you have j'envoie. Remember that our ending is E for je, for ER verbs. Tu envoies. Il, elle envoie. Notice the change. Now, this is because there's that E hanging out there and it's not saying anything, okay? And so to maintain the pronunciation of voix, then we're going to add that, change that Y to an I, all right? And again, A lot of different verbs will do this when you see that extended ending of Y-E-R. Okay. Now, when we do new, we don't have an E. We have an O. And an O and an S is going to be on. It's not an E just hanging out there. So we can keep the Y there. Vous envoyez, same deal. Oh, can't type today. There we go. I needed the S there. And then finally, though, for il l'envoie, we do have that E hanging out there, and that ENT is silent. And so in that scenario, we are going to go back to having the I. Okay. Now, participe passé for this one. That's what we would call a past participle, is participe passé. We're going to cut off the ER, if you remember, and we're going to add the ending to make this a past participle. We're going to take the infinitive, envoyer, and we're going to chop off the ER and add the ending to make it a past participle. And for ER verbs, that's an E with an accent on U, which means that E is going to make an A sound. So the past participle of this one is going to be envoyer. Envoyer. Alrighty. I'm going to let you do past tense on this one on your own. Okay. You have done a fabulous job with your past tense verbs the past two weeks. I've been really impressed. You've done a great job. So I'm going to let you keep doing that. You did fantastic. For pronunciation purposes, j'envoie, tu envoies, il envoie, nous envoyons, vous envoyez, ils envoient. Alrighty. So that's envoyer. Alrighty. That's envoyer. The second verb we have is étendre. Étendre. So again, I'm going to use my handy dandy. I'm going to slip over here to, there's étudier. That'll be the next one we have, I think. Étendre. There we go. So here's one of the ways that we actually can use étendre in this day and age. We can use it to mean to turn off a computer. Just a side note here. I'll actually write that. So, après, j'apprends la leçon. J'éteindrai mon ordinateur. After I teach this lesson, I'm going to turn off my computer. All right, it's an option. Éteindre. It is an RE verb. And so not surprisingly, you should be sitting there going, gee, this probably isn't going to act the way that I think it should. So éteindre, éteindre. Okay, éteindre, to extinguish, to shut down, to turn off, right? Is going to be a fun one. Ready? You're going to love this. J'éteins. It's going to lose the D along with the RE. Isn't that interesting? Tu éteins. Adds the SS and then acts like a IR verb. Brain was going blank there for a second. And adds a T. Okay. Then it gets really funky. Nous éteignons. Vous éteignez. Ils éteignent. What was I doing there? I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. There we go. Ils éteignent. Keep in mind you're going to have the accent over the E for each of those. Okay. So I'll give you a second and you can write those down. You can pause the audio. Past participle for this one is a very interessant. It is. Remember how we had that conversation about how a lot of irregular verbs tend to take their il form and use it as the past tense? Same deal here. Okay, this is your participe passé for this verb. Okay, remember the accent over it. So again, it's taking that il form and using it as a past participle. It's a pretty common trend. Okay, so I recommend take a second, write those down. For past participles, right? Use those and then use avoir comme d'habitude. Okay. All right. What else do we have on the docket for today? Shall we look? I need to move this. Let's see what we got. We're looking at reviewing week 15 material. So let me see what I've got as far as week 15 material, shall I? Let's see. French 1. Oh, comes right up. There we go. All right, let's see what we've got. All right, so we were supposed to talk about our verb endings. We talked about adverbial phrases. That was week 15. Yep, and we talked about adverb phrases. All right, so maybe I was thinking week 14. Do I remember week 14 material? Let's have a look, see. French. Oh, that's French too. Oops. Oopsies. Wrong class. You know what? I've actually got the book right here. Let's see. So a side note to that is, let's see. Okay, perfect. So one other thing that I'll put out, I don't even know if you can get these, but this is a really helpful resource that I've used as well in coming up with French 1. Yeah, these are amazing. They've got a lot of like grammar components and stuff in them. And I usually pick them to use the topics from here. So let's see. Okay. Any questions au certificat? Certificat, on va avoir quoi? Savoir. Wait. Nope, wrong thing. Ah, help. My hand is a hot mess today. Okay, so we've talked possessive pronouns. We reviewed those. One thing we get to talk about today then is qui versus que. And then that's our new material. And then for all intents and purposes, let's see, irregular adjectives. We've really talked about adjectives actually, and I think we've done a pretty good job. And we reviewed adjectives that precede the noun. So I think we're actually pretty caught up, as a matter of fact, because we had the discussion about, hey, some verbs go before, or some adjectives go before, some go after. So I think we're pretty well caught up with adjectives actually. So we're actually on track, which is perfect. So this week we're going to jump into qui and que. And then we're going to talk about questions with savez-vous. So we're going to learn 2 concepts. We're going to give these a try. I'm going to go over them briefly for you. And this is going to be fun. Qui versus que is a lot of fun to actually teach anyhow. And I have a feeling you're going to like really pick it up quickly because you're a teacher. So, all right, qui versus que. We have these conversations with kids in classes where we talk about who versus what or that, right? This is the conversation we're having, qui versus que, all right? Qui versus que. Qui means who. Qui means who. Que means what or that. Kind of depending on the context that it's being used in, honestly, more than anything else. In English, what we tend to do is we kind of use it to mean, we would say, for example, in a sentence, I know he's the one that does that. technically we're incorrect when we say that. We should be saying, I know he's the one who does that, right? And again, if you were a teacher, you probably sat there and helped correct kids on that, help them learn how to do that. This is the conversation we're having, but with French. Okay. So qui is used when we're introducing a statement about a noun. It can mean either who or that, okay, in this scenario. And it's used whether we're referring to a person or a thing. The big conversation we're having, though, is that qui is used when we're introducing a statement about a noun, all right? So qui on its own means who, que means what or that. When we are using a sentence where we are introducing a skill, for example, or let me think of some other scenarios. Okay, so when we're using a sentence where we're like introducing a skill, for example, the one that, the one who, we use either of these to mean the same things, all right? The biggest distinction is that qui can mean who or what in this discussion. All right, the biggest thing is what we're doing it with, okay? When we're introducing a statement about a noun, okay? That's a good way of putting it, I feel like, when we're introducing a statement about a noun. So, any noun, that means that it may be a person, it may be an object. Two examples for you. L'homme qui observe Jean. Okay, the man who observes John or watches John. Okay, or it's kind of smacking of a 1984 George Orwell piece, maybe, but La machine qui observe Jean, same deal, machine that watches John. We would sit there and say in English, oh, you know, that's different, right? But in French, it's the fact that we are introducing a statement about a noun. So like I said, we get on kids for this in school and say, hey, you know, the distinction is who and that. Who is for people, that is for any other inanimate object. French actually doesn't make that distinction. It makes the distinction of, are you talking about a noun? Or the other option is que. Okay. All right. It can mean either who or that in these sentences. All right. It's not picky either. The biggest distinction we're looking to make is when a previously mentioned noun is the object of the statement. We might actually only have time to discuss this topic, actually, now that I think about it, because this can be a little interesting to wrap your brain around. And I actually want you to be able to take some good time with this and really pound this in, actually, because this is a big concept that is important. And I still have to get on my French 2 students sometimes about this. This is a big one. So we might actually just do this topic for today. Qui can mean either who or that in these sentences, but it's used when introducing a statement about a noun. Que can mean either who or that. It's used when the previously mentioned noun is the object of the statement. All right. So here we go. For example, shaking it up a little bit. L'homme que Jean observe. The man that John watches. Man that John watches. La machine que John observe. Machine that John observes. Hopefully you're able to kind of see the difference here. Here are some tips and tricks that I have taught my students for the last few years with great success, okay? When do I use what? Actually, let me change that from what to something more specific because we are literally talking about what or that. So when do I use, that sounds bad. When do I use key or code? When do I use key or code? When do I use what? What's the rules? All right. Here are some tips for you if you can't figure it out. All right. Is the noun subject before? All right. The second noun or think of a good way to phrase this so that it makes the most sense. How have I usually said it? It's not so much that it's before the second noun. Is the noun subject using the verb? That's a little more, I think that makes a little more sense. All right, is the noun subject using the verb? We break down sentences for kids, right? And we say, okay, who has the verb? Who's using the verb? Find the verb. Okay, so in the sentence, l'homme qui observe Jean, okay, where's the verb? The verb is observe, okay? Who or what observes? And we say, oh, well, it's the man who observes Jean, all right? So that means the noun subject is using the verb, all right? It means it's using the verb. If it's using the verb, then we use qui. But then we have to ask the question, well, what if it's not? What if it's the other person? What if it's the second noun that's using it? Well, then that's the example of the fact that it's the object. And so we're going to use que. Okay. Is the noun subject using the verb? Another thing to look at is verb placement. Two nouns before the verb. Qui. Or I'm sorry. Good. Two nouns before the verb. Good. One noun before the verb. Qui. Again, it does go back to that idea of, okay, can I find the subject? Who has the verb? Is the biggest question you have to start asking. And you're really well equipped for this because, again, you were a teacher. I sometimes have to give high school students a crash course in, hey, welcome back to grammar. You need to know English grammar before you can understand French grammar. So I feel like you are probably really exceptionally well equipped for this. All right. So this is the concept we're playing around with. I'm going to keep the video really short and we're just going to focus on this. So we talked about our verbs. I'm going to let you do those in present tense and past tense. And then this concept is what you're going to play around with in your homework. All right. I try to make the first week of giving this a try fairly simple. I'm going to give you probably 10 sentences tops. 5 of them, I'm actually going to have you choose whether you're using qui or que. Like I'm going to give you a sentence in French. You're going to choose, oh, this one needs qui, this one needs que. And then I'm probably going to give you a couple of sentences where you're going to try translating them yourself. Okay. Give it a try, have fun with it. Don't try too hard. Give yourself some grace, right? This is one of those concepts that, like I said, I have to remind my French 2 students of this. It is a big one. It's an important one. And that's why we always forget it, right? So give this a try. Have fun with this. Let me save these. And I'm going to save my chunk of notes here for you and give this to you. And we will meet back in person next week. Thank you so much for having the grace to work with me on this.
last week that I should have to do this. I mean, back in school, right? And everybody's like, oh, we need you to do this, 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 and this. I'm like, y'all. So that should be the last week that I have to do that, barring any kind of emergency or me being sick and can't talk, right? So I appreciate it though. I look forward to seeing you in class next week, and I will post this recording ASAP. Have a lovely rest of your evening.